You're listening to the relaxing, soothing, and stress-free sounds of Sacramento Smooth Jazz.
Welcome back to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. I'm your host, Michael Andrews, and it's a pleasure to have you join us today. Now, we have a very special guest right here in the midst. Multi-platinum jazz recording artist Randy Scott. He isn't just an exceptional saxophonist. He's also a gifted producer and composer who has made his mark on the jazz scene. Randy boasts the remarkable achievement of being a 3-time victor on the nationally televised It's Showtime at the Apollo stage. Now, moreover, he's had the distinct honor of performing at the White House for former U.S. Presidents Clinton and Bush, and his accolades include the prestigious NAACP Walter Francis White Service Award. His journey is well documented, ladies and gentlemen, in publications such as Saxophone Journal Magazine and Jazz Magazine. His talent isn't just confined to saxophone. He's a proven hit maker, crafting chart-topping tracks for artists like Vicki Winans and Tim Bowman. With a bachelor's degree from Michigan State University, a master's degree from Wayne State University, and his association with Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Randy embodies the pinnacle of excellence. So without further ado, I want to welcome Randy Scott to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Randy, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. And I need to take you on the road for an introduction like that every time I perform. So thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
You're more than welcome, man. You are more than welcome. I am thrilled to have you. I have been waiting for this. We've had this on the calendar for a while, and I'm just thrilled that you've made some time for us. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
And so now, as I was looking at your bio and just reading up on you, that very first thing that stood out to me is you winning at Showtime at the Apollo. Not one time, not twice, but 3 times, because for those who are aware, many of us are aware of Showtime at the Apollo. For those of you who are not aware, let me explain something to you. When it comes to amateur night, when you come out there and your first note is not right, you're going to hear about it and you're going to get booed off the stage. And this man won 3 times. And that's a rough crowd. So
it is real rough.
And now going into that, how were you mentally prepared for this?
Oh, it was so. I have a bit of a story about this. This all happened when I was at Michigan State as a student. Student organization put on a show, and we had comedian Sinbad on the show. I opened for Sinbad. This was at Michigan State. And after the show, Sinbad said, "You really should be on my show. You know, I'm hosting Showtime at the Apollo." I said, "I would love to." So he said, "Great." So he kind of helped me get all set up with it. It was happening around 3rd, 4th week of February. I'm a college student. I had no money, no means to get there, because if you recall, there was Showtime at the Apollo and there was another show called Star Search. Well, Star Search was like extremely professional. I mean, they paid for their people to get out there. They put them up in nice hotels, all of it. Well, Apollo was kind of the opposite of that. We had to find our own way there, and I had no money, so I started putting flyers around campus that said, "Send your sweetheart a serenaded song for $5. And I hung them all around campus. Then the day of Valentine's Day, I had my horn and a boombox. I'm dating myself. And these snow boots, because it was like a foot of snow outside. And I'm trudging around campus, dorm to dorm, playing songs, getting $5 a song. That's how I paid to get to New York. I get there, I had no place to stay. I was like, all right, now what? So I started making calls, found a cousin I'd never met, stayed with them, finally got to the Apollo, and I find out that they're taping 3 shows in one day. They wanted each performer to have different songs and different outfits for each show if they won, to make it look weekly. Well, I didn't know this. So I went to the producer of the show and I said, "Look, I only have 1 song and 1 outfit. I didn't know." He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You're not going to win anyway."
Oh my gosh.
I said, okay. And I was, as if I wasn't nervous enough. They had 2 professional acts per show. And so they take the professional acts, I'm talking like named performers, they take those first to let them be on their way. And then they do the amateur portion. Well, I watched 4 of the 6 professional acts get booed. Sinbad had to come out and say, "Look, this is the amateur portion. You're not supposed to boo them. Boo these professional acts. We paid them." So I watched I saw 4 of the professionals get booed and a whole slew of the amateurs get booed before I went out there. I'm literally shaking by the grace of God, I won the first show and ended up wearing Sinbad's shirts to make it look like I was there the next week. He's like 6'3", 6'4", and I'm 5'10", 5'9". So these shirts are drooping off of me. And then I, fortunately won the second and third show, and it was amazing. It really boosted my confidence, but it was so rough. Like everything happened there was 10 times worse in person than what you saw on television.
Right.
In terms of the audience booing and Sandman coming. I thought all of that was rigged. Sandman coming out with this hook and pulling off people. Well, there were people backstage crying, sure enough. So I'm just grateful. My whole goal was to not get booed. It wasn't even to win. It was to not get booed. And I was fortunate to have won.
I didn't know that it was the same day.
Yeah.
And they made it seem like it's 3 different weeks. And so
yeah.
So I was thinking, okay, you were nervous, you won. What was your mindset for the next few weeks? But what was that mindset after you won and then having to do another taping and wear an oversized shirt? Sinbad shirt.
You would think it would get easier, but it didn't. And part of the reason is because the audience, they didn't care that I was young. They didn't care that I had won the first show. The only reason I won the second and third show is because the competition got less and less over the course of those 3 shows.
Wow.
So by the time I got to the third show, I heard people in the front row literally cursing at me. We don't want to hear that stuff again. We already heard it. We played it twice. We don't. I mean, they're saying, and again, the only reason I won is because it just wasn't a lot of competition by that third show. But boy, that was nerve-wracking. It really was. Yeah.
But here you are, multi-platinum recording artist now. But not just that. On your own, you've now produced others.
Yes.
And so here you are producing others successfully, by the way. How was that experience? How you are now producing other folks? Talk to us about that.
Honestly, I think it was a matter of being persistent and not giving up, despite the fact of, there were times that I wanted to give up because in the music, the music business is rough. And there were times, it was a roller coaster, but just staying persistent, but also staying in prayer about it. I really believe that my faith brought me through all of that, really. And is the whole reason, the whole foundation of my success, which I'm so grateful for. And then also just surrounding myself with people who I admire and respect musically and learning like a sponge from anybody and everybody who was doing some major things in the industry.
Having that faith is the key, no doubt.
For sure.
Let's go back a little bit. Why the saxophone?
Oh, yeah. My mother was this huge fan of Grover Washington Jr., and she had literally every album that he had made. And so she had it playing constantly, and I really loved it. But then my parents took me to one of his concerts, and it was sold out. And just to see the reaction and response of the crowd, and then to watch him, and you could see that he was literally one with the instrument. And he just was so into it that he loved it, and his soul kind of just poured through the horn, And after experiencing that concert, I said, oh man, this is what I want to do. And so then I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. Then we moved to Philadelphia, lived in Philly for 10 years. He was living in Philly. I got a straight A report card once. I think I was in the 12 years old. And my reward was to meet him, because I would literally run home from school and try to play every single note. I learned every note from every record. That's how into Grover I was.
Wow.
And so
that's amazing.
I got to meet him when I was 12 as a result of this report card. And we became friends from that time all the way up until his passing. So whatever city he was in, that I was in, he would call me and bring me on stage. And he molded me. He was my mentor. I was faced with the decision of going to Berklee College of Music in Boston or some other schools, including Michigan State, Berklee was more jazz oriented. Michigan State was heavily classical oriented. And he said, well, classical is the foundation for everything. He said, if you can just get that under your belt, it's going to help with your tone and with your musicality and all of that. And then you can do jazz or whatever else you want to do. So he's really the whole reason I ended up in Michigan, going to Michigan State University.
That is really amazing. I didn't read that part. I knew he had some influence, but I didn't know it was that deep. And to have such a mentor
Sure.
is really profound, but yet and still to have the parents to expose you to
It
that
was
great
real
music
deep.
and then
Yeah.
being able to meet him
Yes.
because of your good grades, so you had to put something behind that.
Mhm.
Now, with respect to the classical, he's giving you insight
Yes.
and that foundation
Yeah,
for everything. Your music combines elements of jazz and other genres, I've noticed. And you
Yeah.
collaborate with other people. So when you're collaborating with
Yes.
other people, what's that whole thought process when it comes to being creative with other folks
Sure.
that you've recorded with? How does that start? How do you do that?
First and foremost, I want those artists to be themselves. I should be enhancing what they do and not projecting myself onto them musically. So, I approach it from that standpoint. I try to listen and get a feel for what direction they want to go. And I listen to a lot of what they've done in the past. I listen to what they're trying to do moving forward. And then I build the song that way. And then when it comes to actually recording them, I let them be themselves. And then I'll, go back and tailor it or fix things if necessary. But I love the production side of things because it's kind of like your imagination coming to life. Because it begins with this concept and then you sketch it out. Much like an artist does, you take a pencil and sketch on paper. Well, I do that with the piano because it's my secondary instrument. And then fill in all the colors with all the other different instruments. And then when it's all said and done and you hit play, it's like standing back and looking at that painting that you just did on the easel. And it's your imagination coming to life. And it's the best feeling. It's like it's a different feeling from being on stage, but equally as gratifying.
As you're talking, I'm sitting here visualizing an artist sketching because I'm recalling, I listened to your latest album, Elevation.
Yes.
Came out a couple of years ago. In fact, I believe it was a little over 2 years ago now. And it's phenomenal. And listening to that sketching, if you will, it seems as if you sketched a wave for each track. It just flows down into that collaboration with Cindy Bradley with Daydreams. And then right after that, you go into a vocal with Anisha Burchett. And I'm thinking, and that to me just blew me away because I'm listening to the entire album. And I said, this guy here, is that what you're talking about? Your sketching? Yeah. Okay.
It's partially, it's kind of like, I'll give you an example that it was like 2 records ago. I visited this place in St. Lucia called Jade Mountain, and it sits on a cliff overlooking the ocean. And the resort is only 25 rooms, but all the rooms only have 3 walls. So there's a wall to your left, wall to your right, wall behind you. And in front of you, there's nothing. So nothing comes down, even when it rains. And it's overlooking the ocean. And it's the most beautiful place ever. And so one day I was sitting there just admiring all of that. And this melody creeped into my head. And I hummed the melody into my phone. And I do that a lot. So like if you look at my memos app on my phone, you will see tons of just melodies that I've hummed into the phone or even lyrics sometimes. And that's part of my sketching. And so when I got home after that trip, I played that melody on the piano and then formed the chords around it. Again, that's part of that sketching that I do. And then filling in the colors is when I add all the instruments. So that's kind of what I mean by sketching. However, what you alluded to is also what I try to do is in terms of taking the listener on a journey, song by song on each record. I try to make every song independent and sound completely different than the song before it or after it. So yeah, and all of that, even that thought process is a form of me sketching because I'm thinking about all of that when I'm writing a record. And in fact, this is something someone asked me the other day. They were asking me about my process. I actually write 50 songs for one record. And then I have my wife, who is a total non-musician. She's a doctor. She sits on the couch and she rates each song 1 through 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And if any song gets below an 8, it goes in a little folder on my desktop. And some of the songs are worthy, but maybe not. But again, it's a matter of, once I've written all those songs, it's a matter of kind of putting together a jigsaw puzzle. Because again, I'm trying to take the listener on a journey. So there might be a great song that I wrote that doesn't make the record because it just simply doesn't fit in that journey.
Doesn't fit that.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, when you spoke about Jade Mountain on the Serenity album.
Yes, that is
okay.
On the Serenity. Yes, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking with saxophonist, multi-platinum recording artist, and producer, composer Randy Scott. And he's hanging out with us today, telling us about his journey and also his music and collaborations. Now, we're talking about his album, going back 2015, Serenity. Now, that one there, I really like the first track, Cabo. It just hits it off. You started out really, really nice. And I tell people, you know, when they hear a track they like, don't just download that one. Don't just buy that one. Get the album, because you can go on a journey. And when you listen to that track that you heard, but listen to all the other tracks that precede that and come after that. I was listening to it and I said, oh, wait a minute. Make Me Over? Yeah. You were taking us to church. And I said, totally caught me by surprise, pleasantly though. And I said, okay, there are other elements to this man that he's not talking about. And I've been listening for, but you can go the gospel route if you chose.
I almost didn't put that song on the record because I sang that song. And I'm just not, I don't consider myself a singer. But my wife, she convinced me to put it on there. So.
Like a wise man,
man. Right.
Now, talk to us about your, you have this track that came out that caught my attention.
Okay.
And it invoked an emotion.
Sure.
And I said, we have to have a conversation. I was quite adamant about that. And before we get into that, what was the origination of this? What inspired your latest track, Twilight?
So Twilight was actually written by Michael Broning, and he produced it. It was just a track that I think my label had heard, that he just kind of sent to the label and said, what do you think of this? And then the label contacted me and said, you know, you really should check this out and tell me what you think. I was digging it. The cool thing about working with Michael, and other than the fact that he's this world-renowned Grammy Award-winning producer, he allows the artists that he's working with to be themselves. And he literally gave me no instructions, no barriers or guidelines. He just said, here, just see what you can do with it. Everything that you hear is just what I felt when I heard it. And so I can't speak too much about how, you know, the instrumentation that he used, because he did that track, but I do know that song, the vibe of the song and everything that I played embodies the vibe that I was going for.
That's an amazing track. That's going to go places. Is that the beginning of, you know, maybe an album coming out?
Oh yeah, I have a full album coming out in January. In fact, the album is pretty much done. I have literally one more song to do. I mean, it's been mixed, it's been mastered, but I have one song left that I'm almost finished. And I've pretty much written, Michael and I co-wrote 2 songs, I think, on it, and I wrote the entire rest of it. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I think about early January, I would say. They haven't given me an exact date yet, but I'm really, really excited for this record.
Well, we're going to enjoy the Twilight as an appetizer until then. Awesome. And expect the rest of the meal in January, right? And so now, how can people get in touch with you? How can they connect? Website, social media? What's your preference?
All of the above. So whichever you prefer. I'm on Facebook. Just type in Randy Scott. Actually, I think my fan page is Randy Scott Online. If you just type in my name, I do have a page, but I'm at that 5K limit. You can look me up on Facebook. Also on Instagram, I believe it's Randy Scott 5454. My website is randyscottonline.com. Now, if you just type in randyscotton.com, you're going to see somebody who looks nothing like me. So it's randyscottonline.com is my website. But yeah, any way that you would like to check me out. I've also got a YouTube channel, a Pandora station, a Apple Music and Amazon, all of that stuff. So yeah, would love to hear from you.
You're easy to find.
Yes, sir.
Let's do this. I would like for you to introduce Twilight. Give us a little background on it for our listeners. Let's end it with that so people get a taste of what's going on with you before they get the rest of that meal in January with the whole album being released.
Awesome. Well, you are about to hear my current single. It is entitled Twilight. I hope that it puts you in just the right mood at just the right time. And please look for me when the album comes out. Once again, here's Twilight.
And you're listening to it right here on Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Randy, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. To continue listening to Smooth Jazz 24/7, follow Sac Smooth Jazz on social media and listen by going to sacsmoothjazz.fm.